Welcome to Dice and Mind, a podcast hosted by Brad Brown and Jason Kaufman to explore the intersection of life, games, science, music, philosophy, and creativity through interviews with leading creatives. All are welcome in this space.
You put me up this week, legitimately. You put me up this week to do something that I don't mind doing, but
Acting like an adult.
Well, you've been trying to do that to me
Okay,
since I was 18, and
Go
I'm
on.
now 51, and it still isn't working.
I think you're doing great.
Yeah, I'm attempting. It's called being around you for this long. It's called mimicking. But
I think it's more about just building up your immune tolerance, but keep going.
that could be too. But I flew solo this week because
Yeah, thank you for doing that. Had a
That's
family
okay.
engagement, right?
Yeah, yep, you had a legit issue, and I will say it was a lot of fun. Speaking with WM Akers, who we will call in our interview, Will
Yep.
gave us the
Yep.
permission to do that. Never the same. I will say it is never the same not having our banter in the interview, but it was a fun discussion that we will get into here shortly. But what I found really fascinating is his discussion about role playing,
Hmm.
and that was not on. I'll be perfectly honest, that was not on my radar for discussion. Role playing in terms of his gaming and um,
He's designed and published
yes,
a number of indie games, and we've been respectively intrigued by different ones and have been
yes,
talking about having Will on the show for literally a couple years, if not more.
right,
But where you just did such a beautiful job with the interview, where that just because I was telling you before we recorded, it's the first time, everybody, that I've ever listened to one of our episodes, or at least one of our interviews, because I wasn't in it. And he just he just went. It was a really interesting
he
discussion we
really
had.
just, yeah, I mean, Will, thank you.
Hmm.
You made my job so easy. I'm
Hmm.
never nervous when I do these things because we have such phenomenal guests.
Hmm.
I never like worry. I soloed with our um official Dice and
You
Mind meteorologist, Katie
That's right.
Nicolau,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
that was a lot of
Yep.
fun.
And we already knew Katie, so that helped.
Yes, this was not Katie's first time on the show, or I was just going to say a attempt at showing interest in our show. Um,
We appreciate the feigning.
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Um, but but Will, just in how you were, just in the depth in which how you kind
Hmm.
of talked about your background and interest, and I tried to be very cautious because really into Deadball, and
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
tried to I'll be perfectly honest, I tried to kind of hold back on that because I didn't want it to become a whole thing about Deadball because I could have picked your brain for
Yeah.
hours
Yeah,
about
because
it.
because our actual purpose was to talk with him about Letters to the Stars.
Yes.
But instead, and then we'll turn it over to the interview because now everyone's like, okay, so get to it. What did they talk about?
Hmm.
But I think your chat with Will epitomized what Dyson Mind is about, what our goals are for this podcast. We talked about this a bit.
Yes.
That this is what we're after. This is why we're doing this beyond the inordinate fun and meeting all of these people and chatting with these people, remarkable individuals and creatives. This is what it's about of the joy, the beauty, the literature, just the depth of what RPGs can bring, can offer. And you guys just nailed that.
And Will is not just a game developer, he's a writer.
Hmm.
Just the amount go if you
Yep.
go out to wmakers.net, you can see all that he's gotten involved with and everything. I
Yep.
would recommend people do that.
Yeah, please
But
do.
if you listen to the interview, we do get into gaming, but there's just so much more we've talked about.
Yep.
Um, and it's stuff that much like all of our
Yeah.
episodes, it's stuff that they're so organic. We
Yeah.
went in directions I just didn't expect, and the conversation just was out. It was just just fun and
And it
outstanding.
came across, and it was fun to listen. So, all right, everybody, here's your turn. Let's go over and take a listen. W.M. Akers is a novelist, playwright, editor, game designer, copywriter, and, well, just about any other kind of writer you might require. He is the author of Westside, Westside Saints, and Westside Lights, the creator of Deadball, Baseball with Dice, and Comrades, a Revolution RPG, and too many plays to mention here. He is also responsible for Strange Times, a weekly newsletter that investigates the weirdest news 1921 has to offer, and Strange Pulp, an irregular journal of weird fiction.
WM Akers, we will go by since we talked about it. Will, thanks for stopping in and chatting with me tonight. I have been looking forward to this for a long time because I have been a fan of your work dating back to when I was first introduced to Deadball, and that has to be, oh goodness, many, I would say many. I'm in the tech world, so many is 5 years ago, but it's been a long time. Um, Many years ago, and have followed you. And we talked a while back, and we have finally been able to connect, and I am so excited about it.
It is
Um,
absolutely my pleasure. I was checking my email. I was searching to make sure I had the right link to get on this call, and I saw that y'all first emailed me in 2022. So that
yeah,
was some years ago, and I'm really glad to finally be here. I really appreciate y'all coming back after me, not letting me get
yeah,
away.
yeah. Thank you again. So, just to get started, you are a writer, you're a game designer, um, you're a podcaster. Um, you're not only a writer of novels and games, you write a newsletter. Um, so for me to ask, you know, how did you start? That's really kind of that's almost like a silly, like nebulous question to ask. So I guess the question is, I guess maybe I'll pose it this way um, from the perspective, you're kind of a renaissance man in many ways, just based off of everything that you're doing. Um, Writing in general, how did that kind of like, how did that start fostering itself within you?
I've wanted to write since I was a kid. My dad is a screenwriter and a screenwriting teacher who taught universities in Nashville for decades and has worked in Hollywood. So I grew up in that environment. I grew up watching a person typing on a keyboard, and I thought that seemed like a pretty neat job. But more than that, I think I came to it the way that most writers come to it, which is when I was a kid, I loved to read. And I was obsessed with books. Like the library was and is my favorite place in the world. I was happiest when I had a book in my hand. I've always felt that as long as I've got a book in my back pocket, I'll never be bored. Um, and so I just, as a kid, grew up like loving, loving, loving stories and being really eager to find ways to tell my own stories and to write books and see my name on the spine of a book and, write stories that would excite people and that people would connect with as much as the series that I loved when I was a kid. Because, like most kids, I grew up really, when you're a kid, you get hooked on a series of books and those will just take over your life for a period. So when I was a kid, it was Goosebumps. It was the Redwall books by Brian Jacques. It was when I was a little bit older. It was the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy books. Those were, I just would read them over and over and over again. I would find friends to talk to about them. I was thinking the other day about when I was in fourth grade, my friends and I would go out, my Redwall friends, we would go out and every single day at the playground, we'd take over the sandbox and build recreations of maps from different specific Redwall books. And
Cool.
from that age on, all I ever wanted was to write a book with a map in the front. And I've gotten to do several of those now, and it never stops being extremely cool. So I wanted to be a writer since I was a kid. In high school, I got more serious about it. I worked on a couple of different newspapers in high school. I wrote a lot of short stories. And then when I went to college at NYU, I ended up double majoring in English and playwriting because I had taken some creative writing classes, but I wanted to do a full-on major. And at that time, at least, I don't know if this has changed, but at that time, NYU didn't offer a creative writing major. So I was like, well, I'll go and I'll learn about playwriting and TV writing and screenwriting. And it ended up being the best thing for me, I think, because the way that they teach writing in that kind of program is very different from the way they teach writing in a creative writing course. In a creative writing course, it's a lot about um, Let me think of a polite way to say this. In a creative writing course, there are rarely wrong answers. It tends to be a really encouraging environment, which I think is really important, but can also be a little bit treacherous for a beginning writer, which is really what I was. Whereas in screenwriting and TV writing, especially, and also in playwriting, there are rules and there are, formats you can learn, there are structures you can learn, there are like really rigorous things that you can focus in on. And that focus on structure was really important to me, helped me learn a lot about like how to actually tell a story in a way that people wanted to listen to, and that kind of became like my guiding light for my whole creative life. So that was how I got into writing in a serious way. I wrote plays for my entire 20s, and then I started writing fiction again in around 2016, 2017, and wrote the book that would become Deadball, or sorry, not Deadball, Westside. Westside was my first novel. And while I was waiting for that to come out, I started working on Deadball, which was the game that brought me to you.
Yeah. Yeah. So West Side, how did you, without spoiling it for everyone, because we'll have links in the show notes and everything so people can go and actually check it out. What drew you to the premise of it? Because it's in effect a series of books now, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that turned into a trilogy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and those were so they are supernatural jazz age mysteries. They're set. The first one's set in 1921, and it's in a version of New York City where the whole west side of the island has been walled off with this giant wall, and there are strange doings over there, just all sorts of supernatural, spooky things and great mysteries. But the hook that got me into those stories was an idea I had for the main character, Gilda, who was a detective who specializes in what she calls tiny mysteries, which are the mysteries that are too small for anybody else to care about. It's where did I leave my keys? What's that weird sound coming out, of the window? Like, why is it that when I stand on this one corner at a certain time of day, it smells like chocolate? Like the weird little mysteries, the things that keep you up at night. And each of those books starts off with her pursuing a tiny mystery and then, of course, getting drawn into the type of bigger mystery that she always swears that she'll stay away from. And it was a period that I had been drawn to originally, actually, because of gaming, because at that time I was running a lot of Call of Cthulhu and like classic Call of Cthulhu in a 1920s setting. And so that sort of macabre Lovecraftian 1920s thing melded with stuff that I already had bouncing around in my head because I'd always wanted to write mystery novels. And so those things sort of combined to create Westside. And I've actually, a story I've told before is that I couldn't have finished that book if it weren't for running role-playing games. I wrote the first half of the first draft without really knowing where I was going and just sort of like blindly charging forward. And then I got to a point about halfway through the book where the main character opened up a door and found a bomb. And it was like, ooh, exciting, a bomb. But I couldn't keep writing because I had no idea who'd put that bomb there. It was just sort of an incident that I threw at the wall because I thought, well, we need something exciting to happen here. What if there was a bomb? But I didn't really know who the bad guy was. I didn't know what was going on. And then it wasn't until I ran the great big Call of Cthulhu campaign, Masks of Nyarlathotep, which I can still say, although it takes some practice, that I really had to learn an essential skill for any GM, which is how to figure out what the bad guys are doing, how to think through everything from the bad guy's point of view, because when you're running a role-playing game, you're in charge of everything but the heroes. Whereas when I was working on my fiction, I was thinking about it from the hero's point of view only, and I was sort of forgetting about everything else. So running role-playing games taught me how to figure out how a world works, what the villains are doing, and how they're trying to stop the heroes, and then most importantly, what will happen if the heroes do nothing. And so those lessons, which are so important to make an RPG feel real, I brought into my fiction. It helped me immensely. I wouldn't have been able to finish that book if I hadn't learned that stuff. And there's also just a million other tiny things that you learn while you're running role-playing games about writing. And it's like the best possible feedback because it's live feedback. You're there, you're with your audience. And if you come up with something that's not working, really, really fast because you can see your friends getting bored and you've got to like try to bring them back in. So I've tried to, maintain that same level of energy and urgency when I'm writing books.
Oh, I could go in so many different directions because I didn't expect you to hit the role playing thing so early, and it's funny because one, that was really kind of the onus by which we originally had kind of started the podcast. But one of the things that we've focused on and talked about a lot is, the link between RPGs and literature. And you've just hit upon it. And that is the creativity of both, and how it feeds. And I just find that so fascinating, that your time as a GM, really fed your ability and fueled you as an author and as a writer. And it helps me understand a little bit as a consumer of your material. Like, you have your Strange Times newsletter, which actually came out today. I saw the latest episode. I haven't had a chance. It was episode or issue 233 today, right? So I haven't been able to read it yet. I was busy during the day, but it comes from a similar time period, that 20s.
Yeah. So Strange Times is a newsletter that I've been writing since about 2017, I think. And it came out of the research that I was doing for Westside. My favorite way to do research forever has always been to dig around in New York Times archives, or any newspaper archives, but the New York Times archives are particularly well maintained and searchable and easy to read. So when I was doing research, I'd run a lot of role-playing games set in the 1920s. The difference between a role-playing game and a book is you can make a lot of nonsense up, whereas with a book, you kind of have to try to make it as accurate as possible, because people will go and check. Whereas if you're sitting at the table with them, they're not supposed to be looking at their phones. They can't just go and check whatever nonsense you made up. So I, had to sort of refine my knowledge of the period. And so I spent a lot of time reading New York Times articles. And the problem that I would run into was a very fun one, which was that it is very difficult for me to flip through an issue of an old newspaper without getting sidetracked. Every time I would open up the 1921 New York Times, I would find crazy stuff. And I spent a lot of time bothering my wife with it. And I finally decided that she deserved a break. And so I would bother the whole rest of the world with it by turning it into a newsletter. So it was started really as an offshoot of the research that I was doing for those books. And it is a project I've been working on for a while now. As you said, it's up to issue 233. And so it is a day-by-day close reading of the 1921 New York Times. So I started in, I think, 2017 with January 1st. And now we're up to, I think, August 22nd. So it's taken 8 years to get through most of the year, because it used to be once a week. Now it's just once every 2 weeks. But every single time I open it up, I find something crazy. And just this week, let's see, there was an article about this religious community in Illinois where they decided to insist that all men's bathing costumes have skirts on them that dangled past the knee. So that was just a thing that was in the newspaper. There was an article about 3 guys who spent $2,600 on several barrels of what they thought was bootleg whiskey, but actually turned out to just be water. So they'd been hoodwinked. So just stuff like that I find every time I open it up. There was a really good one recently called Blimp on Rampage, which was about a runaway blimp that flew around over New Jersey, and they had to corral it. They put crazy stuff in the newspaper back then because they just had so many column inches to fill, and they didn't care if a story was 2 sentences long. One of my favorite ones I've ever found was, it was literally like a 2-line story, and it just said population of Buenos Aires now 1.7,233,419. And that was the whole newspaper article.
That was the story.
Yeah, it was just like, we have a little bit of space at the bottom of the page. Somebody open up the almanac and just find us a fact that we can jam in there. And it's been a lot of fun just exploring the really weird and sometimes very upsetting stuff that they published in the 1921 Times.
I use when it comes out, that's like my evening read before, when I start to wind down, because I find that to be relaxing, just because, to your point,
that's a huge compliment. Thank you.
Yeah, it's the type, it's not the newspaper we get anymore. No, obviously.
It's very different.
And so I just find it fascinating, some of and again, I come from the Midwest. So I've looked at the Milwaukee paper, some of the archived Milwaukee papers. There were some crazy stories here and there. Nothing like what I've seen in your newsletter, but that you can get, for folks that are interested, we'll have the link to wmakers.net. You'll be able to, I think you can subscribe. There's a link to be able to subscribe.
It's totally free. And I've never had any success monetizing it, so I just keep it free. It's really just a thing I do for fun, and the community of people who enjoy it seem to really enjoy it. But I think for writers, I think that there is a little bit of inspiration there. I think sometimes if you're stuck picking up something very strange and random can be inspiring. So I'm hoping that there are writers out there who, take this and write a story about a blimp on a rampage or about some guys who got conned into buying several barrels of water.
Barrels of water. That one I saw the highlight, the headline for that, and then the skirt thing, and I'm like, okay, this will be an interesting one tonight.
Yeah.
I purposely didn't want to dive completely into Deadball at first because I wanted to kind of get to that point. So Deadball is different than any sort of game that we've talked about on the podcast before, although I have talked about my sports gaming addiction in the past for folks that listen. What was the premise? I know it because I've read, because you've talked about it in your writings as to the premise behind it. But for those that haven't seen it before, what was your premise behind doing something with Deadball and using, like, it's a very simple system in the grand scheme of things from a dice perspective. And to be honest with you, I think it's somewhat addicting to do. And I'll be honest with you, people can't see because it's audio only. The book, now I have the hardcover and I have the paperback, but it is just a little bit bigger than, if people are interested, than trade paperback for the basic rules. Between that and some pieces of paper and some D6s, or some dice, I'm sorry, you can run and in effect manage your own baseball teams without lots of cards or anything like that. So, and you provide lots of score sheets and lots of information out on the Deadball website too for free.
And there's also an incredible community has grown up around it. We've got a very active Discord and a pretty busy Reddit where people will share not just their information about their leagues, but folks are making tools that can help you, like, run the game. People in the Discord, there's a whole channel that's all just like people talking about their spreadsheets. So, it's that kind of game. And these people are doing amazing work with spreadsheets that's way beyond me. But yeah, just to circle back, like, the original inspiration for it was I wanted a really, really simple pen and paper baseball game. And I actually didn't have much of a background. I had not played much Strat-O-Matic or like ABPA or any of that. Like, it was stuff I was aware of, but I never dug into it because it was confusing from, like, as an outsider. I was like, wait, but what do I buy? How much of it do I have to buy? And all of that, because those business models are usually built around, like, making sure that you buy the new cards every single year.
Every year.
Yeah, which is cool. And it allows for, like, extremely high fidelity, but that's a pretty big barrier to entry. And so at that point, I had been playing, like, lots and lots of D100 Call of Cthulhu, and watching a lot of really bad Mets baseball. And so I was like, I need to combine these two things. And so basically, I wanted a system that was so simple that I could just, like, play it while I was hanging out with my kid, who at that point was about 1 year old. And so I was at home with him all the time. I was kind of bouncing off the walls. It was the middle of winter, and I was, like, really jonesing for baseball to start and for spring to happen. And so I spent like the actual, like, the core of the game came together in, like, 2 days. I just, like, kind of hacked it together. Figured out how it worked and was able to put together, like, a D100 system based around the very simple fact that batting average is a percentage and a D100 gives you a percentage. So if you roll a D100 against somebody's batting average, you can figure out if they're going to get a hit or not. And that was kind of the core of it. And it's gotten a little bit more complicated since then, but the original game was extremely simple. And my original idea was I want this to be able to simulate most of what you'd see if you went to the ballpark. When I put up the original Kickstarter, folks started asking for slightly more complexity. And so I ended up working it out to now it can simulate just about everything you'd see if you went to the ballpark. Not everything, but just about everything with reasonable accuracy. And there are a few things that work in my favor there. One is that baseball is a stop-start kind of game. Every at-bat is a discrete event, which makes it really nice and easy for simulation. I spent a long time trying to make a soccer game and was never able to crack it because soccer is fluid. There's also the fact that in baseball, what, like, every batter is up there trying to do the same thing. They're trying to hit the ball. Very simple. Whereas in soccer, a player could be trying to stop a pass. He could be trying to kick the ball upfield. He could be trying to like hold up play. Like there's a million different things, like a functionally infinite number of things that a soccer player can do. But in baseball, it's actually like pretty restricted, which is why, keeping score at a baseball game is something you can do because there's just only so many things that can happen. Another thing that worked in my favor is that there's already a scorekeeping system in place for baseball. I've often joked that Deadball is just my way of trying to trick people into learning how to keep score at baseball games because I really love keeping score at baseball games. And when I made Deadball, I'd only been keeping score for a couple of years. So it actually sort of stemmed from my like off-season urge to like be playing with my scorebook and writing little letters and numbers into little boxes. So the fact that that was a thing that already existed, that a certain type of baseball fan who tends to slant toward old-fashioned and nerdy, which is really like my demographic because that's very much what I'm like. Yep. Like many of them already knew how to keep score, even if they weren't doing it all the time. It's something that their uncle or their aunt taught them a long time ago, and they kind of remember it. And then there's also the other thing that really makes Deadball work is that baseball is already so random that baseball fans expect a little bit of statistical noise. And so they are okay with you sit down to play and you've got Shohei Ohtani at the top of your lineup. And, he's the best player that's ever been. But today he went 0 for 4 and he struck out 3 times. And it's just like, well, it happens because it happens. So like nobody's going to be like, this game is broken because Shohei Ohtani didn't get a hit. It's like, well, sometimes he doesn't get a hit. A lot of the time he doesn't get a hit. But it still works. And, because baseball is already sort of just like a random number generator anyway, and baseball fans are used to turning those numbers into stories in their head, it turns out that if you give them a fake version of that, it triggers all the same stuff in their brain that happens when they watch baseball, so that by the end of a game, when you look down at your score sheet, at least for me, I feel like I was at the game. I'm looking down at it and it's like it feels indistinguishable to me from a real game that I went to, except that it only took a half hour and I didn't have to spend like $40 on beer and hot dogs.
Yeah, or more these days. I think what I found fascinating is that Deadball is, well, anyone who's a baseball fan, it's a great ingress point to playing what I consider an analog version of baseball. There's lots of electronic digital versions of it, whether you want to play on the computer or on a video
lots
game
of people
system.
I keep it completely analog. Lots of people have they have found ways to play it on the computer to make it easier to like save their stats and like get into games faster. There's a lot of people who are really into tracking season statistics and stuff like that, which I think is super cool. But yeah, for me it's all about just pen and paper.
Yeah, and I still think of that even that as analog. I was thinking like instead of playing like MLB 2K or whatever like that. But even with that, I think it's a great entry point to a sports game for those that come from an RPG background, because to your point, it's a D100 system. You have the dice already. And even if you don't, there's dice rollers for a mobile. You can get free dice rollers,
Google
online.
Is a dice roller.
Yeah. So it's very easy to roll and to play. No disrespect to any of the other games. I love them. I love them out there, but I recently moved, so all my cards are packed. I haven't unpacked them yet. But my books aren't. And so
you don't need much.
No, and with my Brewers having exited much earlier than I had hoped.
I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, it did happen. Well, it happens. You're a Mets. If you're a Mets fan, how you felt pain. You felt more pain than I have. I wanted to continue to play some, and the game gave me the opportunity to do that. And like you said, the community, there is, even Facebook, there's a big community out there, and not even, like you said, you can go to the Discord as well. Reddit is out there. I've read Reddit. I'm follow on Discord. It's phenomenal, the amount of people out there that.
Oh yeah, they're the sweetest people, and they love the game, and they love talking about other stuff tangentially related to the game. And what's cool is how much better many of them know the game than I do now. Like, there are some people they have evolved whole like add-ons for, like to make defense more elaborate, or, for like multi-season play to like smooth that stuff out. And so when people ask rules questions in the Deadball Discord, I will usually let those guys field it before I'll jump in, because they are living and breathing it more on a day-to-day basis than I am, which is awesome. It's like taking on a life of its own in a way. And it's also one of the really cool things about pen and paper tabletop is that when I make rules updates, they can ignore them if they want to. It's not like when your favorite video game releases a patch and suddenly the way that you like to play is all screwed up. Like, I put out the Deadball second edition a few years ago, which
Yep.
like it simplified some stuff that I didn't think was very interesting. Like, it refined some of that stuff, and then it also like brought together a lot of the rules from various expansions and just put it all in one place. And there's like a tutorial in there to make it a little bit easier for people to pick up. And personally, I prefer 2E. There's a lot of people who prefer 1E because it's a little crunchier, it's a little weirder. And they love that. And I think it's so cool that they can keep playing it that way, and I can play it my way, and anybody else can, mess with it however they want. I always say, as long as you play the same for both teams, it's fair. So you can do whatever weird stuff you want in there, and people do plenty of weird stuff.
One of the reasons we had reached out to you a long time ago is at the time I was traveling and I didn't get a chance. Now that we've talked about it, I can't believe I didn't bring this up before we even hit record, but I was actually flying out of Nashville because I was working in Nashville at the time, and sitting in the airport near what was like there's a Gibson restaurant bar.
Yep, I know that.
You know where it is. And because I flew Southwest a lot, and I tend to watch to myself. I don't tend to like gawk at what people have on their computers, but it was very clear that someone had the PDF of Deadball.
Oh, cool.
On their laptop
screen.
I didn't want to, that the last thing I wanted to do was say something, because then it would look like that I was gawking at their screen when they were trying to, but I was fascinated by it and I wanted to say something to them. But they were probably close to my age at the time, mid 40s, later 40s. And I'm like, there he is. They're playing or they're reading at an airport. They don't have to worry about cards. If they're not using actual dice, which I suspect they weren't at an airport, they're probably using a dice roller.
Yeah.
That's what, and in Nashville, obviously they're trying to get a Major League Baseball team. To me, that was like, okay, there's a little bit of a mainstream element now to the game, where if I'm seeing it sitting in the Southwest gates at BNA in 2022, I think it was 2022. Yeah, that blew my mind.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's supposed to be super duper lightweight. And there's a running joke on the Discord where, because all I'm ever trying to do is simplify it, and all those guys are ever trying to do is refine it and expand it and clarify edge cases and stuff. And I think that's cool, because there's a tension between, when you're writing a rule book, you want to make it as clear as possible and as accessible as possible. When you are somebody who is playing a game all the time, you want to add stuff and make it, more and more and more intricate. And so it's been a fun kind of balance to navigate that. So I'm the one who's always trying to pull it back and be like, let's keep it simple. It doesn't matter. Who cares? Just make it up, whatever. But obviously that's not the answer that they're looking for. And so they come up with their own answers. But it's to get back to, the difference between Deadball and some of the other stuff that's out there is you don't have to buy a new thing every year, because it's based on really simple, back of the baseball card kind of stats. So you can just look it up on Baseball Reference or Fangraphs. You can play with real players. You can play with made up players. I think most of the people who have the longest running leagues, I think, are fictional players. I think because they get attached to those players and those stories kind of take on a life of their own in the Universal Baseball Association kind of way. But then there are a lot of people who will, last year, there was a guy who replayed the entire Arizona Diamondbacks World Series season, I think. And so, yeah, he played 162 games, which is a lot. But, if you do one a day, it's about 30, 40 minutes a day, and you can totally do it. It's easier than watching a baseball game every day. But it was really cool to see that guy following through on that, and he was posting about it in the Discord all the time, and he was comparing like this is my record versus like the actual real life Diamondbacks record. And I think he ended up running ahead of them a little bit. So his Deadball team played a little bit better than they did in real life. So I was happy for him there.
I had played like a computer based baseball league going back now, what is it, 35 years back to like the days of what was Earl Weaver baseball. It still exists. It runs on something called Out of the Park baseball now.
I love Out of the Park.
Yeah, friend of mine runs it now. I've been out of it for a couple years. It's morphed over the years, but I found a notebook from 1988 when I moved of our league before, because that was when we were doing dot matrix printing and we had only so much ribbon, I think, at the time, where we would write our stuff out. So I'm actually in the process of taking those 1988 teams and turning them into Deadball teams.
Oh, and wonderful. Great.
And I'm going to run an analog version of our original first year baseball league from eons ago. Just as something different that's non-digital. So now, in addition to all this gaming, going back to the writing, you have some projects that you have been working on or are working on or are coming out, right?
Yeah, so I have got a new book coming out next year. It is not part of the Westside series. It's a whole spanking new series. It's called To Kill a Cook. And it is another historical New York mystery, but this time it is set in very much the real world. No more supernatural stuff for me. It is New York, 1972, very much like dirty old New York City, on the verge of economic collapse. And it's about a food writer who is sort of moving among the highest echelons of like fine cooking and fine dining in New York City, and who finds her friend, mentor, idol, the best French chef in New York City, with his head cut off and encased in a big, perfectly molded blob of aspic. And so she's got to find out who killed this poor guy. So that is the first one. It's called To Kill a Cook. That comes out next year. I'm currently about a week away from finishing the sequel, which will be called Dead as Dirt, to my editor. I can't wait to get that off my desk. I'm very excited about it. I don't want to spoil anything about that one, but To Kill a Cook is coming out on February 3rd. I'll be doing some events in New York City, Philadelphia, Nashville, and Houston, which will be exciting. I've never been to Houston, so I'm really looking forward to that. I'll be there for about 20 hours, but it should be a fun 20 hours. And that has been really cool because whereas when I was working on the Westside books, I had kind of an intuitive understanding of like 1920s stuff, just because I feel like that's a thing that to a certain extent, everybody, when you say 1920s stuff, people get pictures in their minds of like jazz age, gangsters, flappers, silent movies, all that stuff. But the early 70s was a little bit hazier for me. And so it was really fun to dig into the historical research there. Once again, combing through the New York Times archives, although the 1970s Times is a lot less amusing than the 1920s Times. It was a little bit more of a professional operation by then. But I spent a lot of time reading old restaurant reviews and old restaurant menus and memoirs of chefs and just like learning about all of this great weird cooking. And the reason that it takes place in the early 70s is because I think that is a moment when you've got like very strange like 1950s 60s fine dining that is still around, but you've also got really weird like let's put everything in jello kind of cocktail party food that is still like very prominent. But also at that time, you have sort of the first shoots of what would become what we think of as like fine dining today, with like seasonal cooking and like paying more attention to freshness of ingredients and all of that stuff. So it's like a real crossroads point. And my hero, Bernice Black, is like right in the middle of it, and she's trying to solve a mystery. So it's been like a very, very fun era to explore. And I've been kind of, that's where my head has been at for the last 2 or 3 years between that first book and now the sequel.
Any fondue?
Lots of fondue.
All right, it's you got to have this. You got to have fondue if it's the 70s, man.
Yeah, absolutely. People love fondue. I mean, you know, what's not to love about hot cheese?
Hot cheese and toast.
Yeah, like bits of meat.
Yeah, I was born in 74, so I'm old enough that I was very, very little. And I remember my parents having fondue parties and thinking to myself, this is disgusting. as a little kid and thinking to myself, and as a little kid, never wanting to go to bed, but knowing those were the nights that I really was happy I was going to bed. Um, you know, so, but, and so for folks, they'll be able to get a link to the book. You said it's coming out early next year then?
Yep, February 3rd. So that'll
February
be
3rd.
available, wherever books are sold, as folks like to say. So go to your local bookstore, bang on the glass, demand that they pre-order you a copy of To Kill a Cook. It will also be available in audiobook. I got to do one of my favorite parts of publishing, traditional publishing.
Did you narrate your own book?
Oh, no.
Okay.
They didn't want me to do that.
Okay.
For one thing, I'm not a professional, but also it's a woman narrator, so I don't think that my particular base would quite work. But no, but I got to help pick the narrator, and that's always really fun. They'll send you.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, the way it works is they there's a whole audio production team at Penguin Random House, and they're amazing at what they do. And so they will send me like 4 different actors who have each read like the first half a chapter. So we get like 2 or 3 minute clips of them doing not just the main character, but also we get to hear a little bit of them doing like other characters' voices. This book has got several French people, so we get to get a sense of like what do their French accents sound like? How hard do we want them to hit the French accent? Like, do we want to take a light touch with it or go a little bit heavier? And getting to listen to them and try to figure out like, because they're all amazing at their jobs. All of these actors are tremendous, but getting to listen to them and figure out like, okay, no, this one, I think she's really getting like the humor of it, or like this one really has like the attitude that I'm imagining with Bernice, and it's really, really fun, and I can't wait to hear the full audiobook because the actor we picked is amazing.
Now, when you're going and visiting the cities, like you said, New York, you said Philly, Nashville, and Houston.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Are you hitting bookstores or are you hitting?
Yeah. So I live in Philly, so that one's easy. Okay. And then I'll take the train up to New York. I'll be at the Mysterious Bookshop in Lower Manhattan, which is a mystery bookstore in Manhattan, which is founded by Otto Penzler, who is like one of the most important figures in American mysteries of the last half century. So that's going to be pretty cool. It's a wonderful bookstore. Wow. Then in Nashville, I'll be at Parnassus Books, which is the big bookstore down there that's owned by Ann Patchett, and it is like in my parents' neighborhood. I've been there a million times. It's a terrific bookstore. I've done an event there before. And then in Houston, I'll be at another mystery bookshop. So that will be like the crowd there. So I'll get to meet a bunch of mystery fans. I'll probably need to leave space in my duffel bag so that I can bring home some books, because if I'm going to all these different mystery bookstores, I'm going to be doing some shopping. Although I guess maybe I'll bring copies of my book and I'll leave those behind, and then I'll, make room for some, P.D. James or Raymond Chandler or whatever.
Drop some off, pick some up. I always like asking because we love independent bookstores. So always being able to mention, especially folks that are in the area that are around, can know and can keep an eye out for when you're going to be there, and if they haven't visited those bookstores before.
All wonderful spots. I mean, there's no such thing as a bad independent bookstore.
No.
Any place you go into, you're going to find something good. You're going to meet somebody who's just excited to be there and excited to tell you about what they're reading. They're wonderful places, just like libraries.
Now with writing, and obviously you have a little one and everything like that, do you still have time to game at all, or?
Not enough. So we moved to Philadelphia right before the pandemic, and between the move and the pandemic, I have not been doing group RPGs except for very occasionally over Zoom for a long time. So I have been exploring some solo RPGs, like Iron Sworn and those games, which was a big influence on Letters to the Stars, which you mentioned earlier. And playing a lot of Deadball. Frankly, I really like it.
Letters to the Stars. I have not purposely glanced over it. Letters to the Stars was that one. I'll be honest with you. That one came up after my interest in Deadball. That was my intro to you. Mm-hmm. How did that one come about?
Let's see. So Letters to the Stars, that came out early last year. So that was early 2024. And that game is what I called an epistolary RPG, which is a fancy way of saying it's letter writing. And so like Deadball, I'm really kind of a solo gamer at heart. I had a long time while I was running RPGs for my friends back in New York City, and I released Comrades, which is an RPG. But really, I'm fundamentally antisocial when it comes to gaming. And when I'm gaming, it's because I don't want to talk to anybody else.
Mhm.
a lot of the time. And so I've always kind of slanted towards solo games, even when I play a lot of video games, and I never play multiplayer games. Like ever since I was a kid, I've just got no like I've got friends who are always like, "Do you want to play multiplayer? Do you want to play multiplayer?" It's like, no, I want to not talk to anybody. I don't want to have to worry about your schedule. I really just want
That's
to like
me.
check out. And so Letters to the Stars was my attempt at coming up with, I think I call it a solo RPG you can play with your friends. Um,
Yep.
and the premise is that you are the captain of a spaceship that is going on like a lengthy and dangerous mission. It provides all sorts of complications, threats that you have to deal with to try to keep your spaceship from falling apart and keep your crew from falling apart. And at the end of each turn, you have to create either like a captain's log or journal entry, or if you're playing it with somebody else, a message to them. But there's like a whole thing built in around like delays in time, so that the longer you're playing, the longer your messages to your fellow players are delayed. And there's various time scales that it goes into in the book, but basically it's just supposed to be a way of encouraging people to communicate with each other, and also play a game at the same time. Because I've played some journaling games and I think they're awesome. There are a lot of other cool letter writing games out there, like I forget the name of it, but there's a really cool like Jane Austen one, that's all about writing letters to each other. And this is sort of the same idea, but it's in space. And it was very fun to put together, and also just really, really fun to test, because from the first time I tested it, I was like, oh, this is going to work. I knew it was going to work because I got back letters from my friend, who was playing it at the same time. And the stuff that she was coming up with was stuff I would never come up with. It was completely different from the way that I would interpret whatever threat it was that she was facing. And that's like the coolest thing about playing games with your friends, is they come up with stuff that you wouldn't. And that's the reason not to only solo game. But so it was designed to be like an RPG for people who have friends who are far away or who are otherwise like difficult to communicate with. And I think I was really happy with the way it turned out. It's been fun to work on and fun to play.
Yeah, I mean, it is Jason and I are struck because of the time with everything that we've got going on. And then, you know, the podcast was meant to complement gaming. It ended up replacing gaming, unfortunately, in many ways. But I just I just love the idea of like a journal type gaming solution, because much like you, I like the idea of solo gaming. Like I picked up for the One Ring from
Mhm.
Free League. They have what's called the Strider adaptation, which is the
Oh,
solo.
that's so cool. What a
Yeah,
great idea.
there's so you can actually solo the One Ring. And even for like Star Trek Adventures, they have what's called the Captain's Log, which is a solo
Hmm.
version of it for Star
Yeah.
Trek.
So when you're
So
doing that, how do you like to keep your log? Like, do you like to handwrite? Do you like to talk into a recorder? Like, what's your preferred?
I I actually, what's funny is Jason and I have talked about it, and I tried to do it electronically, and I don't think I have one around right now, but I ended up going with oh, maybe I do have. Nope, I guess I don't. Um I end up picking up like a dot journal,
Oh, I love those.
and I like to write just as an exercise to get away from the computer. Now that
It's
being
it's
said,
it's nice to have that option.
yeah, now that being said, just the way transcription and everything is working these days, um I might have to cheat at some point based off of time.
Hmm.
But for me, being able to like go and take two books and walk away, have the phone if I need to communicate with the
Yep.
planet.
It feels really
Um,
good to just be at a table with like nothing but a little bit of paper and a pen. It's a nice feeling.
there's just that's just to me is relaxing.
Oh yeah, it
And
quiets your brain down so fast. You don't think about how stressful it is even just having a phone in your pocket or having the computer open until suddenly you don't, and then it's just like, oh wow. Yeah, and also it's easy. You can take it to the park, you can take it to the coffee shop.
yeah, and I'm like you sometimes. And for me, I always tell people when I am interacting, and this is not a knock on anyone. It's just when I'm interacting, my switch is on.
Hmm.
And there are times where I've, with the work I do, and I sometimes need to flip the switch off,
It's important. Yeah.
and I need to not interact. And sometimes not interacting means not computering either. And so having
Yeah.
pen and paper and everything like that is, and that was the allure of Deadball, and that's
Hmm.
the allure of Letters to the Stars,
Yeah.
and some of these solo games. So,
I mean, there's so
um,
many different beautiful solo games out there that people are writing. There's a newsletter I get called The Soloist, which is just about solo games that come out because folks make them all the time. Because I think there's a lot of very antisocial game
mhm.
designers out there, and it's just yeah, it's a wonderful community, and it's a community of people who don't want to talk to each other, which I respect.
As we wrap up here, because I want to be cognizant of time without, I don't want any spoilers. That's not our thing. But with everything you've got going on, um, you know, do you have like a wish list of projects or anything like that you'd kind of like to work on?
Oh,
But
absolutely.
but
Yes.
time is kind of keeping you from doing it, or
Yeah, the two
yeah.
I always wish I had more time for Deadball. Like the wonderful thing about writing books for a big publishing house is you get deadlines. The annoying thing is you have deadlines. So when
Yeah.
I've got this book coming out next year, which has been the main thing that I've been working on for the last 18 months, 24 months, something like that. So I haven't been able to put out a big Deadball expansion in a year or two. And there's a lot of different Deadball ideas I have kicking around that I just haven't had time to implement. Luckily, as I said earlier, there are folks out there on the Discord who are making really cool Deadball stuff that I don't have anything to do with. And in fact, they've put together the second ever Deadball Con, which will be happening in January. It'll be virtual
I
on the
saw that.
Discord. Yeah, everybody should come out. It should be a lot of fun. Be a lot of people talking about games, organizing games. I'll probably talk a little bit, and other people will. I think there will be people giving talks about their spreadsheets, which if you're not into that, sounds terrifying, and if you are into that, sounds incredibly cool because it is incredibly cool the stuff these people do. But so I would love to have more time for that. I have been wanting for a really long time to make two different games. One is I would love to make a game that is like a mayor simulator, like a tabletop game where you're a mayor.
Oh,
Because ever since I was a kid, I've loved SimCity, City Skyline, stuff like that. But the problem with those games is that you are running like an imaginary city. Like when you're the mayor of a city, you don't start with an empty town. When you're the mayor of a city, you come in and you take over a city that's been around for a long time and it's got a million different problems. And so I've always wanted to try to figure out a way to make a tabletop game where you are trying to contend with some of the real life types of problems that a mayor might deal with. So that is one. And then I've also been kicking around an idea for a game where you are a producer during the golden age of Hollywood trying to make movies without losing your mind. Um, so that is another one. I made a lot of notes on that in the spring, and I haven't quite gotten that testable yet, but hopefully when I have a little bit of time, I'll be able to get to it. I find that when I finish a big creative project, suddenly it's like I have just closed a really like RAM intensive computer program and suddenly I've got so much processing power available in my brain and it can be hard to slow down. So I will immediately like pivot to some other project and work on that feverishly for like 3 weeks. So I'm hoping that when I finish the draft of Dead as Dirt, I can go back to working on the Hollywood game because I think it's a fun idea and I've wanted to make something like that since I was a kid. I used to play a shareware computer game called Sim Cinema in like the late 90s, and my
oh,
cousin and
that's
I were obsessed with
familiar.
it. It was I think it was Mac only, and it was very simple. It was shareware back when shareware was a thing, long before free to play, and you would like you ran a little movie studio and you would come up with franchises. So you'd
It
make a
opened
movie
up and
called
there was like I want to say there was like a marquee that started when you opened up because I
that
played
sounds
Sim
familiar.
Tower
Yeah.
and Sin Cinema.
Sim,
Yeah.
yeah, Sim Tower was incredible. Yeah, so Sim Tower, it wasn't a Maxis game. It was just some dude just made it, and it was
Yeah.
the thing I remember about it was that the cheapest actress you could get was Julianne Moore. She cost $2 million, and so we put Julianne Moore in all of our movies. Schlocky horror, cheesy sci-fi, whatever. We drag poor Julianne Moore into it over and over and over again.
Sim Cinema.
It
Oh,
was beautiful.
wow.
But yeah, so I've always wanted to recreate that feeling of like the feeling that you get from like letting an imaginary franchise evolve the same way that you do in Deadball, but with old movies because I'm a big movie nerd.
That is awesome. Well, thanks for joining us today. I would love to have you back sometime because I think this idea we didn't really I didn't really want to hit too hard on it because we would have gone down a complete rabbit hole on the idea of your gaming background and everything like that and how that influenced. But that is such a fascinating topic. Um, and would love to have you on again to chat more
Absolutely,
about
I'm
it
around.
sometime. But thank you again for your time and appreciate it.
My
And
pleasure. Thank you for having me.
um, we'll have you back as your new projects come out.
Looking forward to it.
Thank you again, Will, for joining us. Phenomenal. We hit, like I mentioned in the interview, and I think I said offline, I tried to like have us hit on lots of different topics, and I
And you
don't feel
did.
like we were able to get deep enough into some of them. So we definitely have to have you back because there's so much
Yeah.
more we could talk about. And I want to have you back so that Jason can
I
join us
I was
too.
just going to say I apologize that I wasn't here. Will, thanks for coming on. I'm really looking forward to talking with you
Yeah,
when you're back.
yeah.
Absolutely. But great job, Brad.
So yeah, I definitely do. But let's head over to Loon Cafe. But
Might as well.
and since I'll let you kick off um this time around. And what's been on your desk or in
Well,
your mind space?
well, that's a long conversation, but we can ignore most of that.
Mhm.
So, as this episode, as it drops, it is very, very early, the wee hours, you might say, of December
Mhm.
2025. But we are obviously recording in November, and so
Very close to Thanksgiving. Not quite there yet, but
gobble
close.
gobble, yes. And so as we record today, this evening, we are just a bit more than 24 hours past, wait for it, our second session
Ah,
of
yes.
Star Trek Adventures, our homebrew game, Ethics of the Fathers.
Yes.
No, ethics, wait, is that what I called it? Yeah.
Yes.
Uh, ethics, I should know that. Good job. Ethics of our fathers. That's what it is. Ethics of our fathers. And we have had I am GMing, you are playing, you are doing a heck of a job. It's very, very much a sandbox game. I
Mhm.
think at this point it's clear it's going to be a three session arc, a concerto, if you will,
Mm.
where like I mentioned this yesterday, but that's how I'm thinking of this when we were wrapping up because we had the first session better than a month ago, maybe six
Mhm.
weeks ago, and then it took some time. And then yesterday afternoon, we had our second session when we went just about to the this crescendo, just about to the climax, or one could really argue we really paused, like scene ended at the climax or the approach of the climax,
Yeah.
and right,
Yeah.
yep, and then next session, which I'm hoping is very very soon, because I want to finish the story wherever you lead us. Then we're going to have the fulfillment of that climax, and I don't know what that is because this is a sandbox adventure that I designed for you so that you can just take it essentially anywhere you want. And you are playing. Let me just tell you, everybody, that Brad is playing this really consummate Starfleet captain and is really, like, you are playing your PC as that PC. And let's face it, we're both guilty of not always doing that so well in any game.
No, we
But
tend to
yeah, we get a little
we were
silly.
we were talking about this earlier pre-recording in relation to something else, and
Yeah.
I always joke we play fun, but in some cases we play what I just made up I just said serious fun, and I've been playing this as
Yeah.
serious
Yeah.
fun
Yeah.
where
As opposed to our typical character alignment tends toward chaotic stupid.
yeah, yeah,
But no,
exactly.
yeah, but yeah, serious fun. And so you are really, your PC is really embodying it. And then the third session, it's just going to make sense, hopefully in the next week or two, of resolving the crisis however you do. I don't know what's coming, which is kind of neat. And then we'll have the denouement, which will, theoretically leave it for a future adventure. But that's what, Brett, that's what's been on my mind and my desk, literally and metaphorically, because it's been so much fun actually being able to play with you. We put so much time into Dice and Mine, and we talk about this all the time, but we've actually both had the time lately to dedicate, and we're only going for like an hour and a half a pop. But
Yeah.
it's I think it's been kind of perfect. And we're treating it as scenes, and it's just giving us good practice, and good times. So that's what's been on my desk. What's been on your desk?
Yeah, well, let me follow up with that, and then I'll say I think what I find the most fun with it is when I'm interacting with my bridge crew, which is you playing the different characters, the different NPC PCs.
Yep.
Um, and I rely as a Starfleet captain,
Hmm.
um, I utilize my bridge crew based off of their expertise in
Yep.
those areas.
Yep.
And I ask them questions.
Yep.
Um, and get their feedback before making decisions. I actually deferred to them in one of my last decisions right before the culmination of the
Yep.
second session episode.
And I told you I was really trying to play the NPCs true,
Yeah,
right? For just how would they actually respond? Yep.
yeah. So,
And I would
uh,
just say to our benefit of the game, like metagaming,
mhm.
I think it's been like between these sessions 5 to 10% of the time. Like 90 plus percent, we and especially you have just been in game playing and making decisions and rolling. There's been almost no side chatter like, okay, wait,
No,
let me ask questions. It's been all in character.
now that you mention it, you're right. We don't metagame or step out of character.
Mm-mm.
I don't. We haven't virtually at all. Once we start the game, I'm in. Now we don't do voices or anything
No,
like
no,
that,
but you are in.
but we are, talking and speaking and working within the context of the game the whole time.
Hmm.
Other than when you narrate within the game.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
that's the only air quote,
right. Yeah.
non in game in game.
Right, but it's still
Um,
not, but we're still on metagaming. It's just
yeah,
providing visuals, if you will.
yeah, you're
Yep,
only yeah,
yep.
and that's when you're like throwing up a visual, which like
Hmm.
today of like the
Don't, well, don't say anything because
oh
remember we have a
yes,
surprise
yes,
coming
you have
in
some,
January.
yes,
So
you had some striking visuals today.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. Or yesterday, yeah, yeah.
yes,
That was pretty cool.
yesterday,
That worked
yes.
well.
So
So okay, so what's on
um
your desk?
on my desk, so what's interesting is ironically the other night, this is a kind of funny, but the other night I was laying in bed and I heard gong, gong, and I'm like,
Oh no.
oh, something happened in my office.
Uh-oh.
And I came in and one of my bookshelves. Now, you as well know with my move, I've put up some temporary shelving
Right. Yeah, quite a
because
bit.
because
Hmm.
I'm not going to be building permanent shelving until next year.
Right.
Well, one of the temporary shelving, I think, started to yield to the weight of the books.
RPG books can be heavy indeed.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and that's what the
Oh
case was.
no.
It didn't come completely down,
Okay, good.
but it started to fall. Like some of the stuff on top
Yeah.
had like yielded forward, slid behind, and
Oh,
started to
oh,
slide the shelf
oh.
forward.
Not what you want on a shelf.
No, so I came in here and at like 2 in the morning
Oh
moved
God.
stuff around, got stuff off the shelf, so I didn't hear like large noises a little bit later in the middle of the night.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so I had to move some books around. And then I grabbed a different shelf and I had to kind of rearrange the room a little bit to account for it temporarily just to get me through the winter,
Yeah.
until the spring. So it's a little disorganized, a little less organized than I had liked. Like, but what it did was is I had moved some of like the box sets
Mm-hmm.
together,
Okay.
just based off of the sizing of the
Yeah,
shelves
right,
and how the
right.
shelf sizes were.
Yep.
And I got out and I started looking at um, the Marvel multiverse
We haven't
set.
talked about that in quite some time.
No, we haven't. And we have some other games that are on the docket that we're going to play, but um, it just reminded me, and I pulled out some of the Marvel material, and I have the set of Marvel stuff, and we'll have our prior guest Matt Forbeck on again,
Yes,
sooner rather than later to talk about all things Marvel
that's
and
right.
more. Um, but I got digging back into the Marvel stuff, and I am just
Good for you.
absolutely just fascinated by the detail that he and the team put
Really?
together with it. And just thought about, and I was talking to my son because I've still been trying to find a way to get to game with my son a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
And he's still, and I messaged him, and he's still intrigued on playing a game if he can either play Deadpool or Moon Knight.
Oh,
And
interesting. Okay.
so um, we have some other things that we're going to work on, but I've pondered trying to utilize like a canned adventure or something like that and seeing
Hmm.
if
Absolutely.
there's a way to do that because my son is a big fan of Oscar Isaac's Moon
Yeah.
Knight.
Good actor.
Yeah, he's a phenomenal actor, and
Hmm.
that series is,
I
I'll be
never
honest
saw
with you,
the end.
really.
We watched it as a family, and then I think I was traveling for, I don't know, a conference or something, and so I just never saw the last. I think I missed like the last two or three episodes.
I never watched it until um, probably about a month and a half ago, and
Oh, okay.
then I binged it
It was
because
fun. Yeah.
my son convinced me to.
Hmm.
Um, and I thought it was fascinating. It's
Man,
just a
how have we not talked about that?
yeah, it's really interesting and different.
Yeah.
But I'm going back and watching a lot of series and stuff that now I have a
Nice.
little bit of extra time
Yeah,
for.
good for you.
So yeah, that's really been for the
Neat.
just for the last week. That's really what's been. I've been on a little bit of a Marvel kick, but um, I've watched a couple movies. I'll save this for a future episode. I've been watching some movies that have had more of like a high fantasy spin to them.
Oh, we need to talk about that.
Yeah. And um, I don't know if I'm ready to play high fantasy right now. I'm more in
Uh-huh.
a sci-fi or
Yep. Yep.
tech fantasy type of mindset, but um, I don't know why. I've been interested in like high fantasy movies for whatever the case may be, just for fun kind of like entertainment, not anything like
Yeah.
super deep.
Yeah, no, good for you. It's we'll have to compare notes.
Yeah,
Definitely.
absolutely.
All right, everybody. As we prepare for winter here in the Northern Hemisphere, you know the deal. We will see you before too long. In the interim, be well, stay well. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.